Captain Vale watched the sunrise through radiation-scorched glass. Red streaks bled across the upper atmosphere of Aloran 4, painting the sky like a wound that would never close. Beneath it, a once-human city, Nexa Prime, lay half-buried in ash and bone. Metal towers twisted in death throes, hollowed by decades of siege. The air still whispered with old screams. In 30 seconds, the first battle of the day would begin, and there would be 17 more before midnight. He adjusted the straps on his exoframe, ignoring the stiffness in his aging shoulders. He had been in this fight longer than any sane man should. 47 years of war, 9 planets lost, 2 reclaimed, and now, finally, humanity had momentum again. They called it the Reclamation, a desperate, all-or-nothing final offensive to take back the worlds Earth had lost when the Norrox swarms poured through the breach and shattered the outer colonies. The Norrox weren't invincible, but they were fast, merciless, and methodical, like ants with plasma weapons and a hive mind for tactics. They didn't conquer, they scoured, left nothing behind but bones, until the Reclamation fleet, until him. Captain Vale, fleet commander of Terran Reclamation Group 6, had a reputation in the stars. To some, a ghost in black armour. To others, a monster who turned dead worlds into beacons of flame. But to those who still wore the flag of old Earth, he was the only reason humanity hadn't gone extinct. Vale stepped out onto the ruined deck of the TNS Harbinger, his flagship and oldest companion. Its hull had been welded back together with parts from 17 other ships. Entire corridors were sealed off with memory steel and prayers, but it still flew, and it still carried war. His second-in-command, Commander Rishi Darlan, met him at the bridge, eyes bloodshot from another sleepless night. 17 dropships launched from Norrox carrier pods, 3 different theatres of engagement, urban, subterranean and orbital. She didn't flinch. And we've got 32 minutes before the next system jump window. Plenty of time, Vale said grimly, strapping into the command cradle. What's our first target? Aloran 4, civilian sector. Survivors holding out in a subterranean metro tunnel. Enemy forces advancing from 3 fronts. He nodded. Deploy Viper squads, 1 through 5, bring down 2 Titan walkers, and light the goddamned sky up. They descended like fire. Every Terran ship in Reclamation Group 6 rained kinetic bombardment on Norrox forces converging on the metro line. Pulse cannons tore through synthetic chitin, and plasma sprayers ignited fields of soldier drones. Viper squads dropped feet first into chaos, carving swaths through the enemy with smart carbines and searing blade arcs. Vale led the charge himself, storming down into the tunnels with a handful of veterans. His presence rallied survivors, many of whom hadn't seen a Terran uniform in over 20 years. One boy, no older than 12, wept openly when he saw Vale's battle crest. "I thought we were forgotten," the boy whispered. Vale looked at him, voice calm. "No one's forgotten, not on my watch." By the time the last Norrox drone fell, 36 minutes had passed. 2 squads lost, 73 civilians evacuated. Vale didn't linger. He left before the gratitude could turn into questions about the burned-out eyes and missing limbs. Before anyone asked how long this salvation would last, he was already preparing for Battle 2. Hours passed. Worlds burned. The Reclamation fleet moved like a storm. Battle 3. Low orbit over Rithis Moon. Anti-matter sabotage drones. Battle 5. Boarding action inside a hollowed asteroid base, fighting Norrox psionics in 0G. Battle 9. A biolab overrun with corrupted human clones, screaming memories built to destabilize morale. Each time, Vale adapted, shifted strategy, traded men for ground, then traded ground for time. His body screamed with strain, his implants lagged, his neural sync throbbed, but he kept going. At Battle 11, he lost a cruiser, the Justice Flame, to a Norrox suicide worm that detonated from within the ship's water supply. 1,700 lives gone. Vale didn't stop. He whispered their names once, then gave the order to advance. At Battle 14, he killed an old friend, Commander Holt, who'd been captured and mind-twisted into a hive node by Norrox tech. Vale put a bullet through the man's skull as Holt smiled and said, "You don't have to fight anymore. We've made peace. Join us." Vale didn't answer. He never answered the hive. By the time the 18th battle began, back on Aloran's upper atmosphere, In a cloud storm filled with burning wreckage and screaming metal, Vale's systems were redlining. His heart was fluttering. His muscles seized every third breath. He was still standing. He had to. Because that's what captains did when there was no one left to carry the flag. Mid-battle, a signal cut through the interference. Terran command. Static-laced but unmistakable. Reclamation Group 3 and 4 report collapse in the Orion front. We need you, Vale. 6 more systems under siege. Can you hold the line? Vale looked across the broken sky. His hands gripped the command cradle one more time. Yeah, he whispered. I've got more in me. The sky above Meros Theta was already burning when Captain Vale arrived. The planet had been a forge world, once the loudest drumbeat in Earth's outer war industry, churning out armor plates, railgun slugs, and Titan hull cores from its molten mining fields and orbital smelters. Now it was just wreckage in a decaying orbit, ringed by broken furnaces and Norrox weapons nests. Debris arced endlessly overhead, the ruins of both human pride and Norrox precision. Terran survivors called it the furnace line, and they were dying one trench at a time. Battle 12 started with a scream. Vale's drop pod hit the ground at terminal velocity, punching into a trench line already crumbling under the weight of Norrox siege drones. The moment his boots hit the ferrocrete, he opened fire center mass, drilling a line of molten plasma through 2 crab-like assault forms, lunging at a wounded Terran trooper. "Fall back! Regroup on Sector Delta!" he barked. The soldier didn't hesitate. Nobody hesitated when Captain Vale showed up. Behind him, Viper Squad 6 and 7 fanned out. Rishi Darlan dropped in moments later, taking command of artillery repositioning. Her voice was calm despite the chaos. "We've got 30 minutes until orbital phase shift pulls the ground war vertical. After that, everything goes to hell." Vale nodded. "Then we end this in 29. The Norrox weren't holding the furnace line. They were digging beneath it, destabilizing the trench system with pressure mines and seismic tunneling. When those tunnels ruptured, the entire defensive line would collapse into the molten crust. Vale knelt over a downed engineer, grabbing the man's wrist. "What's your control override code?" The engineer blinked through blood in his eyes. "Delta 018. But sir, the fusion lines..." Vale was already transmitting. "Command override. Initiate burn tunnel purge. No hesitation." "But that'll cook the line. Our people... They're already dead if we don't close that tunnel," Vale said, steel in his voice. "I'm not here to watch another planet die." The order went through. Deep below, the old Terran forge lines erupted in a controlled chain of micro-detonations, white-hot fire boiling up from the earth like a mechanical volcano. The ground shook. Dozens of Norrox tunnelers were incinerated instantly. The trench began to collapse in reverse, not from beneath, but by design. It was the equivalent of amputating a limb to save the body, and it worked. For now. Above them, Terran orbitals cracked through the upper atmosphere. Dropships rained kinetic bombardments, driving back what was left of the Norrox siege line. Thunder echoed across the scorched surface as one of the last smelter towers ignited from within, collapsing in on itself in a plume of molten steel. Vale stood in the smoke, his armor seared and his HUD cracked, issuing orders through grit teeth. "Reclaim the north platform. Secure the mag rail. Set automated sentries in case they regroup. Then we leave. Meros is done." Dalen approached him quietly, pulling off her helmet. Her face was pale, eyes hollow. "You saved Furnace Line," she said. "They'll be talking about this one in the war colleges, if we ever get to build any again." Vale didn't respond. His gaze was fixed on a broken hull nearby, once a civilian evacuation transport. It had been hit in the opening Norrox assault, torn clean in two. Inside, he could still see charred skeletons and crash harnesses. "They'll talk about it," he murmured, "but they won't understand it. None of them will." They evacuated in silence. Meros Theta's orbit began its final descent. In 20 hours, the planet would collapse into itself, a funeral pyre for everything lost. But for now, it was a win. Above the debris cloud, the Harbinger drifted back into formation. Only 8 Terran ships remained with Vale's fleet now. The rest were gone, lost over Ganymede's fall in the Siege of Hollow Station in the black rain of Eleron. The Reclamation was bleeding, but it was still moving, one planet at a time. Back on the bridge, Vale met with Terran command through encrypted beamcast. A senior officer, Admiral Crane, appeared in ghostly light, his face drawn, jaw set. We've confirmed 25 new incursions. The Norocks are adapting again. No surprise there, Vale said flatly. We're thinning out. Command wants to consolidate. Pull back to defend Proxima and the inner belt. Vale stood up slowly. No, Crane narrowed his eyes. Excuse me? We consolidate, we die slower, that's all. Every world we abandon becomes another breeding ground. I've seen what the Norocks build on our corpses. So what do you propose, Captain? Vale stepped forward, unblinking. We attack harder. The Admiral laughed, bitter and tired. And where will you find the men? Vale leaned in, voice a low, resolute growl. I'll find them in the dirt. I'll raise them in the fire. We're not fighting for territory. We're fighting for memory, for the right to say we were here. 18 battles in one day. I'm still standing. He paused, then smiled faintly. Let's see how many more we can win before we fall. The Chron Black shipyard was never meant to be a battlefield. It had been a dream once, a monument to human ambition, a lattice of shining alloy and floating docks, stretching across a gravity-neutral zone near the gas giant Chron. At its height, it produced a destroyer every 31 hours and a corvette every 10. It had also housed over 50,000 engineers, families and AI overseers. That was before the Norocks turned it into a corpse ring. Now it was little more than twisted scaffolding around a bleeding star, infested with Norocks boarding spores and still-breathing human host husks. People repurposed into organic relay stations for the hive's spread. Captain Vale had seen hell. Chron Black was something worse. Status report, he ordered as the TNS Harbinger blinked into orbit alongside the shattered yard. Commander Rishi Darlin's voice came cold over the bridge. We've got 3 heat signatures in the eastern spine of the yard. Former human habitats, no comms response. Could be survivors, or could be traps. Vale leaned over the tactical screen. The shipyard stretched like a broken skeleton across his display, riddled with biological residue. Spores, pulse worms, Norok skitter drones. Doesn't matter. If there's one survivor, we go in. They deployed in silence. Battle 13 had begun. Vale and Viper Squad 9 breached the shattered outer rim, maglocked to the yard's spin frame. The air was gone, vented years ago in the first assault. Inside, everything had the stillness of a grave, until the walls moved. Contact. 4 o'clock, multi-limb form, engaging, Sergeant Halloway shouted, unloading armor-piercing rounds into a hulking Norocks harvester, crawling along the corridor wall like an insect with steel bones. The squad moved with brutal precision, clearing rooms and old dormitories filled with sickening remnants, scraps of old Terran uniforms, shattered pictures, dried red splatter that had once been families. Then they found the first survivor, or what was left. It was a woman, barely more than skin and wire. Her eyes had been replaced with neural relay nodes, her hands fused into the wall, fingers twitching like they were still typing. "Help," she whispered. Vale leaned in, helmet off. "You're safe. We're taking you out of here." Her voice cracked like a dry speaker. "Don't let them remember me. Not like this." He didn't ask questions. He pressed a mercy stim to her chest. She died with a smile. They planted thermite charges at every relay cluster they passed, wiping out the hive's long-range signal webs. The Norocks had converted Chron Black into a cerebral amplifier, one that boosted their tactical coordination across sectors. With it gone, dozens of battlefronts would tilt in humanity's favour, if they could destroy it in time. Just as they reached the control core, the hull screamed. A warning. A Norocks carrier dropped out of phase above the station, already releasing boarding claws and atmosphere-stripping projectiles. "We've got 2 minutes before they're inside," Rishi reported from the Harbinger, voice sharp with urgency. "Extraction routes compromised." Vale tapped into his comms. "Then we don't extract." "Sir, you know what this station means. I finished the job. You get the rest of the squad out." He sealed the bulkhead behind them manually. Tactical HUD blinking red. Oxygen levels dropping, heart rate peaking. Vale pressed the final sequence into the relay core. The charges ignited in a daisy chain arc across the spine of Chron Black. Fire rushed through the station. The Norocks screamed, first in body, then in the comms as their amplified tactical network fried in a blinding data burst. Ships across 4 systems blinked out of sync. The hive reeled. Human fleets across the sector pushed forward instantly, turning stalemates into surges, all because one man didn't leave. Somehow, Vale survived. He was flung into vacuum, tumbling for 16 minutes in 0G, suit half frozen and comms black. The Harbinger tracked his fading beacon and dragged him back on board with a mag clamp arm just as his life support dropped to 0. He didn't wake up for an hour, but when he did, he sat upright, coughed blood, and croaked. "How many more battles do we have left today?" Commander Dalen handed him a stim injector. "5, sir, including the rally at Tarsus Red Dot Vale stood. His knees shook, but only once, then stopped wasting time." The Norocks would remember Kieran Black as the day their network fractured. Humanity would remember it as the moment Captain Vale became more than a commander. He became a symbol, a man with 18 hours and no fear, a man who reminded them that Earth did not run and it never forgot its people. Tarsus Red wasn't a planet. It was a rock, a spinning mass of iron-rich alloy and ancient pre-colonial mining facilities, useless, forgotten, and strategically irrelevant. At least until the Norocks set up a relay spike there. Tarsus became critical when Command intercepted a Hive signal burst. The spike was amplifying Norocks' troop patterns across the inner belt, feeding real-time battlefield intelligence to drone swarms light years away. If the spike wasn't destroyed within the next 2 hours, Earth's last push would be overrun before it began. The only force close enough to reach it? Captain Vale. He landed with 70 Terran soldiers, all that remained of Reclamation Group 6. The Harbinger stayed in low orbit, shields barely holding. They had no backup, no evac. It wasn't a mission, it was a death warrant. Vale knew it. So did everyone else. "Drones incoming. North Ridge," someone shouted as the first wave crested the horizon. Norocks assault crawlers spilled over the broken ridgelines like a living tide. Thousands of biomechanical limbs scrabbling for purchase. Their mandibles clacked in unison, an eerie, teeth-rattling rhythm that reverberated through the stone. Vale fired the first shot. "Hold the line! This is the end of the map! There's no fallback!" He plunged into the swarm like a hammerhead, gun blazing, sword drawn. The Terrans followed him, not because they expected to survive, but because they refused to let him die alone. The battle became a blur of fire, shrieking chitin and blood-slick rock. Turrets exploded, troopers screamed, pulse weapons overheated, but still the line held. 3 hours passed. No reinforcements came. Dalen fought beside Vale until she collapsed from shrapnel wounds, dragged away by medics who had no more painkillers to give. The air was poison, the gravity was failing, and the Norocks were adapting, they always did. Vale stared out across the battlefield as the final wave approached, twice the size of the first, this time with anti-shield psionic casters at the core. "We don't have the firepower," a corporal gasped. "We don't need firepower," Vale replied, placing the last fusion charge into the relay spike's control base. "We need purpose." He looked at what was left of his people, maybe 30 soldiers standing, all bleeding, all worn thin, and yet still standing. Vale activated the detonator. The spike surged with light, then exploded upward in a lance of atomic fire. The feedback shattered every nearby Norocks drone, frying their hive links in a millisecond. The shockwave rolled across the rock plain like a tidal surge, tossing metal and monsters alike. The Norok swarm faltered, then broke, then ran. Silence fell. Terran soldiers slumped to the ground, some laughing, others sobbing. Vale dropped to one knee, finally letting the weight settle. Commander Dalen's voice came weak through his comms. 17 battles, sir," Vale coughed. "No," she frowned. "What do you mean, no?" He looked skyward, toward the Harbinger, toward the stars. "I'm not done yet." Captain Vale returned to the Harbinger half dead. His armour was fused in places, chestplate fractured, and his left hand wouldn't close anymore. The medics tried to pull him from the command deck. He pushed them aside with his one working arm and took his place in the command chair. "Status," he said, voice low and cracked. Commander Dalen, pale and stitched, turned from the tactical screen. A Norocks carrier just phased into orbit. Massive. Class unknown. It's not targeting the planet. It's coming for us. Vale didn't flinch. What weapons? Broad spectrum. Rail arrays, boarding tendrils, swarm dispersal chambers. It's something new. He stared at the readout. The Norocks had sent a flagship, their answer to his 17 battles. Vale opened fleet-wide comms. Attention, all surviving Terran ships. "This is Captain Vale of the Human Reclamation Fleet. We are not retreating. Not after everything we've done. This ship, this crew, we are the final line." He stood, blood trailing down one leg. "This is Battle 18, and I am still standing." The Harbinger surged forward under Vale's command, alone, unsupported. The rest of the fleet was too damaged to follow. The Norrox flagship unleashed its drones, clouds of them, descending like smoke and claws. Vale gave the order, "Ram the core!" The ship bucked as its engines screamed. Anti-collision alarms blared. Shields collapsed under psionic pressure. The Norrox carrier fired and half of the Harbinger's portside vanished in flame. Still it pushed forward, one warship, one purpose, one name. Vale didn't blink when the first boarding tendrils tore into the ship. He grabbed a pulse rifle with his remaining hand and charged down the corridor with Dullen and the last Marines, clearing deck by deck in brutal room-to-room combat. There was no strategy, only fury, only defiance. They made it to the reactor just as the Norrox breached the core level. Vale set the overload sequence manually. He looked to Dalen. "Tell Earth what happened here." Her eyes widened. "You're not. I'm finishing the day." He shoved her into the escape tube and sealed it, then turned, faced the approaching swarm, back straight. Rifle raised. The Harbinger exploded 30 seconds later, a white nova in low orbit. The Norrox flagship was torn in half, its hive link severed permanently. Across 4 sectors, drone armies fell still. Terran forces surged. Earth was saved, not by a fleet, not by a miracle, but by a man who fought 18 battles in a single day and won. Epilogue. They never found Vale's body, but the fleet carries his name. Every new Terran warship bears it in silence on its hull plating, V-Class. And every soldier learns the same story on their first day, that humanity doesn't surrender, that pain is not the end, that there was a man who refused to stop fighting until the stars themselves went quiet.